He wasn't supposed to be there that night. He had left work 10 minutes earlier or taken a different road. He would have never seen the wreck. But fate doesn't ask for permission, it just places you exactly where everything is about to change. The rain was relentless, blurring the empty highway into streaks of silver and shadow. His old car rattled softly as he drove, one hand on the wheel, the other wiping fog from the glass. It had been a long shift, the kind that drained more than just energy. He wanted nothing more than to get home, sleep, and forget the world for a few hours. But then, through the storm, something caught his eye. A car. Not just any car. A sleek, expensive one, twisted unnaturally against the divider. Its hazard lights blinked weakly, like a fading signal no one else had noticed. He slowed down, heart tightening as a strange instinct took over. Most drivers would pass. It wasn't their problem. He couldn't. Something about the stillness around that car felt wrong. He pulled over, the rain instantly soaking him as he stepped out. The wind howled, carrying the sound of distant thunder. Each step toward the wreck felt heavier than the last. When he reached the driver's side, his breath caught. Inside, a young woman slumped against the seat, her head tilted, strands of hair clinging to her pale face. Blood traced faint lines along, but it wasn't the sight of injury that shook him. It was how still she was. "Hey, can you hear me?" he called, tapping lightly against the broken window before forcing the door open with effort. No response. Panic crept in, sharp and immediate. He checked for a signal. Nothing. Storm had swallowed any chance of calling for help. His mind raced, searching for anything he could do. Her breathing was shallow, almost gone. Seconds began to feel louder, heavier, as if time itself was watching him hesitate. Then something clicked. He had seen this once before, not in real life but enough to understand what needed to be done. It wasn't a thought he had time to question. Leaning closer, he steadied himself, ignoring the pounding in his chest. "Stay with me," he whispered, though he didn't know if she could hear him. He pressed his lips to hers, forcing air into her lungs, trying to pull her back from wherever she was slipping. Once, twice, again. Each attempt felt like a gamble against silence. Rain dripped from his hair onto her face, mixing with the tension of a moment that refused to break. And then Legast from Shahor. A gasp, a gasp, sharp, sudden. Edda, alive. He pulled back instantly, eyes wide as she struggled to breathe, her chest rising with desperate urgency. Grief crashed over him so fast it left him almost unsteady. For a second, neither of them moved. The storm roared around them, but inside that broken car, something fragile had just returned. Eyes fluttered slightly, not fully open, not fully aware, but there was life there now. Real, undeniable life. He exhaled slowly, stepping back as the weight of what he had just done settled in. He didn't know her. He didn't belong in her world. And yet for one brief moment, their lives had collided in the most unexpected way. In the distance, faint sirens began to echo through the storm. Help was coming, but something told him this wasn't where the story would end. Sirens grew louder, slicing through the storm like a promise that help was finally near. Blue lights flickered against the rain, reflecting off the wet asphalt as the ambulance rushed closer. Stepped back from the wreck, his hands trembling slightly, unsure of what to do now that the moment had passed. Paramedics moved quickly, their voices sharp and focused as they reached the car. He barely glanced at him, already pulling equipment, checking her pulse, stabilizing her neck. He stood there for a second longer, soaked and silent, watching as they carefully lifted her onto a stretcher. Her eyes were closed again, her face pale under the flashing lights, but her chest rose steadily now. That was enough. It had to be. One of the paramedics asked a quick question. Had anyone else been there? What exactly happened? But before he could explain fully, the urgency of the situation pulled their attention away. Within moments, they loaded her into the ambulance. The doors shut with a heavy thud, and just like that, she was gone. The highway felt emptier than before. He stood alone for a while, the rain still falling, the sound of sirens fading into the distance. A strange silence followed, heavier than the storm itself. He looked down at his hands, still unsure how something so small, just a decision made in seconds, could feel so significant. Eventually, he got back into his car. The engine started with a tired hum, and he drove off, blending back into the night as if nothing had happened. That's what he told himself, at least. Just another incident, just another stranger. But the next morning didn't let him forget. The cafe TV was louder than usual, the news channel repeating the same headline over and over. Major accident, a near-fatal crash. But what caught everyone's attention wasn't the accident, it was the identity of the victim. A billionaire heiress. Her face appeared on the screen, clear and unmistakable. Even without the context, anyone could recognize the kind of life she came from. Influence, a world far removed from his own. The report spoke about her condition, her unexpected survival, and the mystery surrounding the moments before help arrived. Doctors say those first few minutes were critical, the anchor said. Someone intervened before emergency services reached the scene. An unidentified individual may have saved her life. The cafe buzzed with quiet curiosity. People whispered, speculated, wondered who it could have been. A hero with no name. A stranger who disappeared before anyone could ask questions. He sat there, frozen, staring at the screen. A strange feeling settled in his chest. Not pride, not strange feeling settled in his chest. Not pride, not fear. Something in between. He hadn't thought about it like that. To him, it was instinct, a reaction. Now, seeing it unfold like a story, hearing strangers talk about it like it was something extraordinary, it felt different. Too real. He lowered his gaze, stirring his untouched cup of tea. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to walk away and let the world keep guessing. That would be easier, safer. People like her didn't cross paths with people like him, not beyond a moment like that. But as the news replayed her image again, something tugged at his thoughts, her breath returning. That single gasp, he remembered it clearly, like it had carved itself into his memory. And then, just as he was about to look away, the report changed. A statement from her family, a public message. They were looking for the man who saved her. A reward was mentioned, a large enough to change someone's life overnight. But it wasn't the number that caught his attention. It was the tone, not just gratitude, but urgency. They needed to find him. He leaned back slightly, his mind suddenly louder than before. It wasn't over. Not for them, and maybe not for him either. Outside, the city moved like any other day. Cars passed, people walked, life continued. But for him, something had shifted, and deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that staying invisible might not be as simple as he thought. The city didn't feel the same anymore. Everywhere he went, the story followed him. On screens, in conversations, and passing remarks from strangers who had no idea they were speaking about him. The mystery man. The one who appeared out of nowhere and vanished just as quickly. It should have felt distant, like something happening in another world, but it didn't. He tried to ignore it. Days passed, and he kept to his routine, driving the same roads, stopping at the same places, pretending nothing had changed. But something inside him refused to. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that moment again. The storm, the silence, the sudden breath returning. It wasn't just a memory anymore. It felt unfinished. Meanwhile, in a hospital room far removed from his world, she was waking up to a different kind of silence. The room was quiet, controlled, guarded. Machines hummed softly around her, their steady rhythm confirming what everyone already knew. She had survived. But survival came with questions. Fragments of memory drifted in and out, blurred by pain and confusion. Remembered the rain, the impact, the crushing stillness that followed, and then something else, a presence. It wasn't clear, not enough to form a face or a voice, but it was there, a feeling she couldn't explain. Warmth in the middle of cold. Urgency wrapped in something strangely calm. Lingered with her even now, refusing to fade like the rest of the night. Someone found you before the ambulance, her father told her gently, standing beside the bed. Believe that person saved your life. She turned her head slightly, her expression faint but thoughtful. They know who it was? He shook his head. Not yet, but we will. That answer didn't settle her. If anything, it made the feeling stronger. Because deep down she knew this wasn't just about being saved. It was about the moment. It's something that connected her to someone she had never met. Back on the streets, he heard the announcement again, this time louder, more urgent than before. It played from a screen mounted above a busy intersection, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Her voice. I don't remember everything, she said, her image appearing clear and composed despite the faint signs of recovery. But I know someone was there, and if you're hearing this, I just want to say thank you. I want to meet you. He stopped walking. The world around him continued, people moving, cars passing, but the sound of her voice seemed to cut through everything else. There was no pressure in her words, no demand, just something real, honest. First time doubt crept in, not about what he had done, but about what he should do next. He had told himself it didn't matter, that it was better this way. But hearing her speak, seeing the way she searched for someone she couldn't even remember, it changed something. He wasn't just a stranger anymore. Not to her. That realization stayed with him long after the screen went dark. He tried to walk away, to let the noise of the city drown it out, but it followed him. Through every turn, every quiet moment, because deep down, he knew one thing for certain. His story hadn't ended that night on the highway, and whether he wanted it or not, it was already a part of what came next. He told himself to stay out of it. Let the story belong to someone else, a nameless figure who did the right thing and disappeared. That version felt safer, cleaner, but the truth didn't sit that easily anymore. Her voice kept returning to him. Not just the words, but the way she said them. There was no distance in it, no formality. It felt personal, like she wasn't speaking to the world, but to one person, to him. And the more he tried to ignore it, the harder it became to pretend that moment meant nothing. One evening, he found himself standing outside a large building without remembering how he got. Glass walls reflected the fading light of the city, security tight, guards posted at every entrance. He didn't belong there. He didn't belong there. That much was obvious. His clothes were simple, his presence unnoticed among the steady flow of expensive cars and well-dressed visitors. He almost turned back, but then he remembered the storm, the silence, that single breath returning from stirring the remembered. For Stern 4. Then he remembered the storm, the silence, that single breath returning. And he stepped forward. Inside, everything felt too polished, too controlled, the kind of place where nothing was left to chance. He approached the front desk, hesitating for only a moment before speaking. "I think I was there that night," he said quietly. At first, it didn't seem to register. The receptionist glanced at him, uncertain, as if trying to decide whether to take him seriously. But something in his tone, steady, without exaggeration, would chore her. Pause you Elsh made her pause. Within minutes, the atmosphere shifted. A quiet call was made. A door opened somewhere beyond the lobby, and suddenly, he wasn't invisible anymore. He led him through a corridor that felt longer than it should have, each step pulling him deeper into a world he had never imagined entering. Thoughts grew louder with every second. What was he doing here? What if this changed everything? What if it already had? When the door finally opened, time seemed to slow. She was standing near the window, the city lights stretching behind her like a distant horizon. It looked different from that night, stronger, composed, but there was still something fragile in the way she held herself, as if part of her was still searching for something missing. For a moment neither of them spoke. Her eyes settled on him, studying, searching, trying to connect something she couldn't fully see. He felt it too, that strange pull, like standing on the edge of a memory that hadn't quite formed. Pull woolquam frien fam t1 pull wifrens for a mind tatrum. It was you, wasn't it? She said softly. He didn't answer right away, not because he didn't know what to say, but because the moment felt heavier than words. Finally, he nodded. I didn't think it mattered, he admitted. I just did what I could. Silence followed, but it wasn't empty. Into pure poor weren't too bad. It was filled with something unspoken, something both of them were trying to understand. She took a small step closer. I remember how it felt, she said, her voice quieter now. Bers quiz you with the come the new the courcha boy sporche. Her voice quieter now. Not clearly, but enough. I remember not being alone. That was when it changed. Not the room, not the distance between them, but the meaning of everything that had happened. It was no longer just about survival, or a moment in the storm. It was about connection, expected, unplanned, but real. He had entered her world thinking he would leave just as quietly as before. As they stood there, facing each other, it became clear that walking away wouldn't be that simple anymore. Because whatever had begun that night was only just starting to unfold.